by Sagan. Is it that time again? I guess that means I'm here for my monthly dose of intellectual masochism, taking form in reading iERROR's Apologetics booklet, The Eternal Challenge, A Journey Through the Miraculous Qur'an. Today we'll be taking a look at 2 chapters. First, why believe in the Qur'an, and then the concept of God. Okay, I'm not usually one to target titles, but to whoever in iERROR finalised the order of said chapters, don't you think the first chapter, i.e. Why Believe in the Qur'an, would have been better placed at the start of the book? You know, before you reference the Qur'an 35 times in attempts to argue your case. Your average person would have thrown this away before they made it up to this point, as so far your Quranic claims have been ones of presupposing that the Qur'an is true, which failed on so many levels. Imagine if a stranger walked up to you and said, "I have been sent to you as a prophet of God, follow me." How would you react? Apart from perhaps thinking this person sounds crazy, you would probably also ask for proof. This would be the natural reaction for most people, were they to be presented with such a momentous claim. This allows one to distinguish genuine prophets of God from the many liars and delusional people that are out there. Except the large pool of evidence available disagrees entirely. Just look at L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology, or Jim Jones and the People's Temple. Fact is, neither of these men had what Muhammad had, an army. Muhammad was a warlord. He gained power by killing anyone who disagreed. His rise to power, and with him that of his religion, had nothing to do with reasoning. It had everything to do with a sharp sword and a strong arm. The Quran informs us that God sent clear proofs with his messengers. We sent our messengers with clear signs. The prophets were given miracles by God as evidence of their prophethood and to bring mankind to faith. Some examples of miracles include Moses parting the sea and Jesus healing the sick. However, these miracles were performed in the distant past. These are not signs that we can experience for ourselves. Believers have to accept them purely on faith. But hang on now, wasn't the last section all about how Allah is supposedly fair? Tell me, how is it fair to change the conditions of a test halfway through? Also, just because the Quran says your God sent clear signs does not make that the case any more than when a child says their dog ate their homework. I mean, some of these claims should have left physical evidence, but there is none. Where we can test the claims of the Quran, they fall short. The Quran is the miracle of Prophet Muhammad. Muslims believe it is the greatest miracle of all the prophets. What makes the Quran different from all other miracles is that it is a miracle which everyone can experience for themselves today, simply by opening a Quran and reading it. Let's look at some examples of what makes the Quran such an amazing book. You needed an entire chapter to say that Muslims believe the Quran is a miracle, like on its own. Why didn't you just state that in the opening paragraph of the opening chapter before going right into it? This booklet is just so poorly executed. It seems like you were set a quota to reach, so you tried your best to fluff it out, and in that the order became confused and disjointed. The concept of God in the Quran is illustrated beautifully with the story of Abraham. Long ago we bestowed right judgment on Abraham, and we knew him well. He said to his father and his people, "What are these images to which you are so devoted?" They replied, we found our fathers worshipping them. He said, you and your fathers have clearly gone astray. They asked, have you brought us the truth, or are you just playing about? He said, listen, your true Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth, he who created them, and I'm witness to this. By God, I shall certainly plot against your idols as soon as you have turned your backs. He broke them all into pieces, but left the biggest one for them to return to. They said, who has done this to our gods? How wicked he must be. Some said, we heard a youth called Abraham talking about them. They said, bring him before the eyes of the people, so that they may witness his trial. They asked, was it you, Abraham, who did this to our gods? He said, no, it was done by the biggest of them, this one. Ask them if they can talk. They turned to one another, saying, it is you who are in the wrong. But then they lapsed again and said, you know very well these gods cannot speak. Abraham said, how can you worship what can neither benefit nor harm you instead of God? The Qur'an shows us that worshipping anything created such as idols is illogical. As the story of Abraham demonstrates, he was able to smash the idols to pieces. Since idols are not able to defend themselves, then they obviously cannot benefit or harm us. So why should mankind take them as gods? Rather, we should worship God, the one that gave us life, sustains us, and will take our souls when we die.
Well, that's funny. Your God doesn't defend himself either. I mean, look at the story you just gave. It was Abraham who had to destroy the statues, not your God. And today, shove his holy text in a toilet and it is as defenseless as those statues. I wonder what that means if we apply the logic you yourself just utilized. I'll give you a hint. Your God doesn't exist either. Want a further test? Grant a demolition team access to the stone at Mecca. We can see just how long that sucker stands. But of course, you won't do that because you know your proposed deity and his supposed manifestations are just as pathetic as the statues Abraham destroyed. It's not Allah who can harm us or benefit us. It is the people who follow Allah. Sadly, they seem to be doing mostly the former, not the latter. Sometimes they disguise this as the latter, but it is the former that has the greatest effect, the destruction caused by Islam. The way for you to overcome this is to learn how to separate your beliefs from your day-to-day lives, like Christians have. Fact is, non-belief is growing, even in Islamic populations, so one way or another, your religion will shrink until it is a fringe belief. So it's merely a question of how you want to go. Remembered as simply another stain on human nature, or as a force with a troubled past which became a force for good. Islam is in a severe need of a reformation.
Now, we have to think about the various gods and goddesses that are worshipped in religions other than Islam. Aren't they similar in appearance and nature to human beings and animals? Don't they all have weaknesses and shortcomings? We are now going to refer back to the 112th chapter of the Qur'an. We will use this chapter as a measuring stick by which we will conquer all gods and goddesses to the Qur'an's concept of God. Say, He is God the One, God the Eternal. He begot no one, nor was he begotten. No one is comparable to him. Amazingly, there is no god or goddess who measures up to the Qur'an's concept of God. All other deities fall short. Give it a try. think of a deity from an idol-worshipping religion and see if it can measure up to the Quranic standard. If the god is part of the creation, for example, they were born or died, then they fall short of the verse, God the Eternal. If they look like anything in creation, for example a human being or animal, then they fall short of the verse, no one is comparable to him. In just 4 short verses, the Quran shows that every other deity that is and has ever been worshipped by man is inferior to God Almighty and therefore not worthy of worship. Shouldn't we worship only that which is worthy, something that has no equal? As we have seen, it is only the Quranic concept of God that does true justice to our Creator's majesty, supremacy, and power.
First of all, why so material? You've only discussed half an absence of anthropomorphic qualities. That's not all humanity consists of. What about the cultural practices, the emotions of rage, pride, and greed your proposed deity shows so very often throughout your holy text? Why does your God show so many human qualities in the desires and orders, even though they supposedly have no need? It doesn't make sense. Your God is as human in that respect as Thor, Zeus, or Kali. You just deny it. An argument said assertion does not make. As for your challenge, what about the Ik-Onka, which is the Sikh deity or spiritual force? They lack physical form, and their name literally means one who cannot be compared or contrasted with any other, which, funnily enough, sounds pretty comparable to your Allah. So consider your challenge met. Fact is, they didn't start out this way. Just like Allah evolved through the Old and New Testament, Ik-Onka seems to have relations with Hindu texts. Allah is not one of a kind, nowhere near. Sorry to have to be the bearer of bad news, you are talking rubbish as per the norm. There is no miracle in the Quran asserting that it is true. If a lie admitted it was false, it would cease to be a lie. So I think that's enough for today. This is Essence of Thought. Take care and out.